guys in the dark.
My mom and stepdad were the caretakers of a small cemetery for about 10 years. All of us kids, there were 6 between the two of them, helped out at one point or another. One summer, I was helping my mom with mowing and upkeep. It was a really hot summer day, so we could try to go and get the mowing done early before the heat became too unbearable. Well, we had trouble getting the truck going, so we ended up starting a little later than usual. We were unable to finish up everything that day. My mom had an appointment the very next morning, and the day after, it was supposed to rain. So I told her that I would go up early the next morning, finish up the trimming with the weed eater. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm listening to music with my headphones and going around the headstones. Everything was going well until I got to the oldest section of the cemetery. That part was on a small slope of a hill. When I finished up the last headstone, I turned off my equipment and started back up the hill. I glanced up just in time to see a little girl in a pretty red dress. She was running and disappeared right behind a large headstone. I figured that her parents were visiting another grave, and the little girl just ran off to go entertain herself. It was around 9 o'clock in the morning at this point. I got to the top of the hill, and there was no car or any people around. The cemetery wasn't really close to any houses, and the girl was too nicely dressed to have just walked out there. I looked around. I shouted for her to come out. I was unable to see the headstone that she ran behind. I could have seen her if she ran out again. Funny thing is, I couldn't find her anywhere. I called my mom and told her what was going on. I asked her if I should call the police to tell them about this little girl. She looked to be about 3 or 4 years old, so she couldn't be by herself. My mom had asked if she was wearing a red dress. I said yes. Why? She proceeded to nonchalantly tell me that she was just a ghost girl. Now everyone who knows me knows that I'm terrified of ghosts. I asked why she didn't tell me that there was a ghost in this cemetery. She said that she needed my help and was afraid that I wouldn't go if I thought that it was haunted. Now granted, I probably would have been more leery of the place, but knowing no one could help her, I would have still helped her that summer, but I would have made sure that I wasn't there by myself. I still go there sometimes, as I have relatives buried there, but I'm always with somebody. Fortunately, I have never seen any other ghosts, and I have never seen the little ghost girl ever again. I was a tombstone caregiver for a cemetery in Georgia. It was a summer job for a 16-year-old. There wasn't anything crazy, just cleaning off the grime of the elements on tombstones. Now to set the scene. The cemetery, including buildings that housed bathrooms for the 5 staff members of this cemetery. It was a small mausoleum. Other than that, flat earth with tombstones everywhere. The only surroundings were dense forests. That being said, due to the eerie surroundings, I was always a bit paranoid. Plus, I watch a lot of scary movies. One night I was doing my rounds. I had to go into the small mausoleum. It had some of the richer families in the area entombed within. I had to go in to make sure all was neat and clean. Standards had to be held for these uppity folks. I approached, and right off the bat, I noticed something was off. The air was cold, even though it was during the summer in Georgia. There was also a light coming from the mausoleum. I approached it. I heard voices. I wasn't sure if it was laughter. It sounded like it was from a child, possibly a little girl, or maybe younger kids that had sneaked in. I hadn't seen anyone enter or leave the cemetery. The laughter sounded pretty young. I got closer. The voices and the laughter died, like almost instantly. I paused. The light, I also noticed, had gone out. I call the lone security officer that does a few rounds on the lot, because I'm not going in alone. We'll call him Officer Friendly. When Officer Friendly arrives, we both go inside. We see one of the doors to the entombed remains of a girl open. Nothing seems to be disturbed within, but it was still somehow open. A doll lay on the stone beneath it. Officer Friendly and I do a small sweep, which didn't take very long. We close the door to the girl's entombment and after we get about 30 feet from the mausoleum, voices and laughter start up again. I jump, and Officer Friendly nervously asks me, "Do you hear that?" We look back, and boom! Lights flicker again. Laughter continues. We don't go back. We just book it. I found out the next morning that the door was open once again. This time the doll was on the other side of the mausoleum from where we had found it the night before. I was never really close to my grandfather, mostly because when I was a child, my parents had decided to move to the UK. Because I was so young, I would rarely speak to him. We didn't really talk over the phone. When we did, it was just comforting to know that he was alive, since he had spent the last years of his life feeling really bad. I think he died somewhere in 2010, just a little shy of his birthday. During this time, I was still living in the UK. When my family had heard the news, they flew back to our home country for the funeral. Stayed there for a few days. Stayed longer due to the eruption of a volcano. So fast forward to 2014. At this point, my family had already permanently moved back to our home country. My uncle decided that he would put something on my granddad's grave, something that wasn't flowers, since they didn't last very long. He had went out and bought this white angel. He gave us some paints for us to use. I'm artistic, and I'm into that kind of stuff, so I agreed to help him with it. We spent a couple of days on it, so that we could paint it and let it dry. We tried really hard to make it look good, especially seeing as how I felt like it would be a way to show that I had respected him. Once we were satisfied with our results, we had went to the graveyard and placed it next to the tombstone. Some of the lettering was faded on that tombstone, that's why I had brought black paint to fill the words in while we were out there. A week or so later, it happens to be a Sunday, and my uncle goes to church every single week. After church had finished, he wanted to go visit the graveyard so that he could go check up on the angel. When he got there, he found that it was missing. He walked around the graveyard to see if somebody had possibly moved it. It was nowhere to be seen. My uncle told me about it. I was really angry and sad that it went missing. I don't understand how somebody could be that cruel, stealing something off of someone else's grave. It's very disrespectful. The next week, every time I would leave the house, I would try and take a peek into other people's gardens, just to see if I could find it there. I never found it. We tried to look on the bright side, assumed that whoever stole it took it because it looked pretty good. Stealing is a problem in my rather small and quiet neighborhood, even to this day. Houses are always being robbed, so it's kind of a normal around us. Anyways, after about 3 weeks, we realized that it was not going to show up. I had my suspicions on who it was. There was this old lady in the neighborhood who happened to be a kleptomaniac. I thought of her. Obviously, I didn't prove it. During April of the next year, my family and I were at my grandmother's house. We were all sitting down eating dinner when the doorbell had rang. My uncle, as usual, had went to go answer it. There was nobody outside. He got really angry, thinking that the kids next door were playing some prank. The doorbell didn't ring after that. When I left later on, it was as I was exiting the house that I saw the angel was outside. It was hidden, just to the left of my door. So my uncle probably couldn't see it when he had opened it. It was in the exact condition that we left it in. We didn't take it back to the graveyard. We thought that it would be stolen again. My uncle did tell our priest about it, though. The priest apparently found weird pouches filled with what seemed like herbs and incense all around the graveyard. I've heard of rumors that there are old ladies practicing witchcraft, but nobody knew who could be doing anything like that. One day in May of the exact same year, when my mother and dad and I were at a cafe pretty close to the cemetery, a person that they knew happened to arrive. They started chatting. I found myself bored with the conversation. My mom noticed that it was 5:10 p.m., so she instructed me to place the flowers that she brought for my grandfather's grave on the grave, since she and my dad happened to be talking to this guy. The graveyard opens up at around 8 a.m. and then closes around 6 p.m. It's only 1 minute from the cafe. I crossed the road with my flowers in hand, when all of a sudden, right at the entrance, I saw that somebody was hunched down, close to my grandfather's grave. I could tell that it was an old woman, who I did not know. I did notice that she grabbed one of the wax candles sitting nearby. She didn't notice me right off the bat, since she was far away. She soon spotted me. By the look on her face, I believed that she recognized me. I had no idea who she could be. I also felt a little unsettled by her presence. I had ran back to the cafe and told my mother about the woman. She was still busy chatting with her friend. She didn't go with me right away. There was about 6 or 7 minutes left before the cemetery was closed when my mother decided to come with me so she could see this unknown woman. When we got there, the lady was gone. We ventured to the grave to find the candle that I told her about was missing. After telling my mom what this lady looked like, she's sure that she was never seen this woman, and most likely to blame for the angel's disappearance as well. We still have no idea who this woman is. I've always thought of the possibility that maybe my grandfather had a lover, since she was upset or angered that he was married to my grandmother. Stealing things off the grave made her feel much better, or made her feel like she got her revenge. I really don't know. The look on her face creeped me out. I am certain that she knew who I was. Dave is one of our oldest workers, and he has been here forever. I ask him, "Hey Dave, you ever experienced anything creepy here?" He replies to me, "Back in the 80s, I began working here with old Frank. One afternoon, we had a funeral for a child whose last name was kind of odd and sticks with you. Eggleton. We lowered the casket without a hitch. His family was gone. It was just about 8 of us. We started lowering the vault cover that his family had bought. My rope surprisingly snaps. My side had come crashing down and took out the bottom right of the casket. I looked down there, and there was the kid. All I saw was his leg. Black pants, creamy white shoes. I had to go sit down after that while they had fixed the cover. I was just 5 feet from the guys on a bench when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I looked over, and it happened to be a young man. He had a watering can and was in an all-blue suit. I figured that he was going to water flowers at another grave or something like that. He calmly chuckles. "You're definitely not the first person to do that. Don't worry about it. We all end up buried." I laughed with him, watched him walk over to another grave under a maple tree, and started watering the flowers at the stone. I walked over to go check on the guys, just to make sure, because I do believe in ghosts. I asked Frank, "Hey, is that guy actually there?" Frank responds, "That's not funny. Of course he's there." I laugh, but the next time we look over, he happens to be gone. I've never seen old Frank so startled in his life. He tells me that grave is a single and hasn't been dug yet. There's not supposed to be a tombstone there. Old Frank pulls me to the side, tells me to keep it between us. I walk around 10 paces to the gravesite. My jaw drops. There's not a thing there. No tombstone. Nothing. A few years go by. Dave passes away. His burial was in an older section that rarely has burials anymore. We were lowering him. An innocent part-time kid couldn't bear the weight of the vault cover and dropped it. We finished it. I walked down to the kid, telling him not to worry about it. It happens to everyone. I brought a pail of water to fill up next to the bench so that I can water the sad, lonely flower pot someone brought for Dave. I put my hand on the kid's shoulder, joked while filling it up. I started walking up to the hill, and I noticed a grave with a name that I couldn't forget, Eagleton. I had tunnel vision right to Dave's grave, and up to the maple tree it was under. I'm in shock. And I look all over my body while I'm wearing a navy blue suit. I immediately ran to the records cabinet to check to see this gravesite was bought by Dave. I went through pages of years of binders, filled with the records of purchases and who's where. Dave and his family never purchased the grave. No one has ever purchased that grave.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.